euch steht das alles zur Verfügung, ihr habt das alles da.
First of all, just hello, and thanks for obviously Opta for inviting me. Very similar to what Andy and Peter have discussed, I think my role for the best explanation within Reading or for this presentation would be I would be their tactical analyst. One of the questions was, do you go and watch games live, where they were based mainly in the office and video based. I was the combination of the two. Like in all teams, it's very much dependent on budgets, so dependent on how many staff members you can have and the equipment and so forth. At Reading, it was just me, so I was having to kind of do a little bit of everything, which hopefully this will show you in terms of, whilst I've been at Reading, I've had numerous different roles. So initially I've started off at Sheffield United, who are League One, should be Championship next season, just within the academy. And then when I've been employed by Reading, I've worked within assistant first team analyst when we actually had a department as such. I had more than just one. Then when our analysts went and worked in the MLS, then it was just myself, so I was the lead analyst. I then just focused predominantly on opposition, and that's where the coaches took more of a hold on our performance, and I focused more on opposition. And then this year I've moved across to recruitment analyst, and now they've got the role of head of recruitment and analysis to oversee it all. Such a kind of varied experience of different roles, I think, has helped me in terms of understanding the different perspectives of what a coach would want. The areas from academy where it's more development. I think in this, it's so much more results based, obviously, for a first team. Being the assistant, you obviously are more as a support analyst, where you've got the lead, you're heading everything by yourself. From recruitment, again, is just looking purely at players. So that's, hopefully I can delve into more of just the lead first team analyst, which I did for a couple of years. So this is just a little bit of a snapshot in terms of some of the areas within a report would be used. Again, this is very much tailored based on what would the coach want. The coach at the time was very much, he wanted something simple. He wants to know immediately what sort of team they are, what's their strengths, what's their weaknesses. So through the Opta data, we used a lot of the ranking system. So it was just based on the 24 teams in the league, where are they? How successful are they in certain areas? As you can see there, chances created they're first, but conversion they're low. So that's where, in terms of coming away from initial scout reports, we would have what's one of their weaknesses, and they'll say, oh, they don't score very much, they don't have much conversion. That's suggesting let them have shots on goal then, because they don't score very many. So in terms of a scouting report, it's not useful, but in terms of a stats report, it is, because then you can straight away you can see they're actually creating the chances, even though they might be in the lower half of the table and things like that. Again, so that's just the snapshot of numbers of strengths and weaknesses. Again, there's obviously more than just three aspects of a performance, but again, just breaking it down so a coach can see it, is possession based, if they're a direct style of play, or counter-attacking. Again, this all came through the Opta data, mainly through the query tool, which is all going to be combined by the Provision, I believe, going on from this season and next season. And again, what this tries to represent is what style of play they use, which you can see there, it's more of a counter-attack. But each line represents where they are based in the league. So on the outside, means that they're ranked the highest in the league. So based on counter-attack, some of these were shots after a fast break, goals resulting directly from a counter-attack. So that's not just to represent how they play, but it's also how effective they are in that style of play as well. Similar to what Andy and Pete have already shown you in terms of the pass maps. So again, this is for the coaches to look at immediately, and they can see roughly the shape of the team. So a 4-2-3-1, a 4-3-3, however you interpret it. Again, in terms of who the key players are, who receives the ball the most, and who passes the ball the most. So again, it's just a quick snapshot. So again, which will lead on to how you can view that in video. The set plays is also used. So in this report, we'll compile between 15 and 20 pages, but this is just try to get a quick snapshot of each. This is again just a representation of where the corners have been delivered and their movements and their average start positions. In terms of my role, where again Andy and Pete explain that they're present at the game, I'm not. So my role would be to go and be at the opposition games and not at the Reading games. So this is always a tool for the coaching staff to have next to them as well, because they won't have me next to them to kind of explain what will happen, who'll be this, who'll take the deliveries and things. So this hopefully gives an overview of the last 6 to 8 games, who's taken the corners. So when the team sheet comes through, the coaching staff will have a bit more of an educated guess as to who's going to take it, what style of delivery as well. Again, trying to use the ranking system, so it shows how many corners they've had, but as we all know, numbers, you need to have some form of comparison. So they've had 103 corners. Is that good? Is that bad? So it's ranked in terms of 4th in the league. So hopefully that will represent, that the style of play will be getting it out wide. They're going to probably deliver a few crosses, which resulting in winning corners. How many times they're delivering it into the box, how many times they're playing short. So again, it shows you a percentage and the ranking system. The key part of this is just being as efficient as possible. You would obviously want to go into as much detail as possible, find as many algorithms, but with it just being me, you have to be efficient in everything you do. The Championship is a tough league for the people who have obviously been involved in it. I think we average around 55 games a season. I think that's about 13, 15 midweek games a season. So where the effect of this comes in is this has to be prepared facing on a Sunday morning. So 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock when the first team come in, if we've got a game on the Tuesday, we're quickly you don't really review their past performance, wrongly or rightly, but just for time commitments, if we've played on the Saturday, which is arguably an away game, and then we have another away game on the Tuesday, everything has to be done and prepared. So this is where it's a snapshot and it's easily manageable for the coach to have a look at and understand, yep, I have a good idea of how they play. I think moving on to more of the video aspects in the next slides, I think that the trick is trying to find that balance of using numbers and having informed observation. And I think that's where, again, in terms of the staffing, which I don't want to keep going back to, but it's important to know why teams work in certain ways. We don't have full-time scouts, or we have 2, or we would have had a head of recruitment and a chief scout, but they're purely they're player recruitment solely based. So again, where you'll be able to have communication with scouts, bearing in mind this has to be done facing 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock on a Sunday morning. If your scouts are part-time, you can't expect them to turn around a full report by the next morning because they don't get paid. So that's where, in terms of my role, having to go to the opposition, that's where it came more important as well. So this is where, I don't know if you're aware of like the iCoder. Literally, I will go to games and it's just on my phone and I can code games live. So again, in terms of the turnaround and the timings, this was essential for me. So throughout the week, I've watched 3, 4, 5 games on the opposition to compile videos and to compile that report. But that report is not finalised until you've been to the last game. That last game, again, is very important based on who they're playing against, if they play the same formation as us, or if we're playing a team home or away. So again, it's just very basic, but in terms of being able to combine that, the stats side of it, the analyst side, and the video side, this was essential for me. So we have certain stock buttons which we'll use every week. So again, if areas of the pitch, how they're attacking, and say they broke it down into kind of the build-up, the progression and the creativity, so how they're playing out from the back, if they're going long. The areas of the pitch where they're receiving the ball, so you can code it just so you can review it back on the video. Out of possession, attacking third, middle third, defensive third. Similar to one of the questions in the last presentation where saying if you're already looking for certain elements because the stats are already showing you that's where the passes should be, that is kind of what you do when you're watching that last game. If you've watched 4 or 5 games already, you already should know how the opposition are going to play, so you can prepare that already. But equally, going into that game, you can't be biased and blind to only look for those key aspects, because again, it's very much dependent on if they've had certain injuries, the opposition are playing a certain way. I think the advantage of me being able to go to that last game is where we previously would have had part-time scouts go to the game. They will write a report and rightly just say what they've seen. That's what a scout does. But they won't have the understanding as to why that team's played a particular way. They won't know that a guy has been suspended, or they won't know that they've changed formation to combat the opposition. They will just think it's their normal team. So that's where I can go to a game immediately and look at the team sheet and understand, yep, that I understand why they've played that formation, or they've changed it because they're playing home or away. Again, just moving away from the stats, it's important for me to go to the games, because if we're playing that team at that ground as well, I can just go back and explain the pitch is poor, the pitch is good, the atmosphere, they're under pressure. So that's the other element of it as well. In the game as well, this iCoder, for the ones who haven't used it, is manageable. So as the game's going on, you can add different buttons. So if a key thing has happened during the game, you can add it, or if someone's been sent off in the game, you can obviously tailor your coding window to that as well. Again, similar to what Andy and Pete showed you in terms of the sports code timeline. So this is just an example as to how we've used it. So when I've been coding the game, obviously all the timeline buttons or the codings come up on there. So that is where the codings that I've made. Equally, what we'll do from the Opta, we can import the XML. So from my game, I'll export that and add it into the timeline. Equally, the Opta will code all the championship games, and I can import that as well. So again, when I'm at the game, lots of scouts you see are trying to tag and try and work out all the set plays, and they're wasting time missing other elements of performance. I now know when I go back, I don't have to scrutinise all the set plays, because when I get back home or back into the office, I can review the video and make sure there's nothing that I've missed in terms of set plays. So that's where, going back to that report, you can get the tailor the average positions from set plays. With this as well, all our coaching staff have this software. So what I can do in all our games, they will have all the XMLs. And so all the coaching staff will have all this information, including and the report. The key element, so when we're making the video, they can add certain clips to the video that they want me to review when we're presenting to the players. But equally, going back to the original slide when we're talking about the key individuals, because Opta allow you to create a timeline for each individual event, when I've suggested there's certain key players, or they can see who receives the ball the most, you can click on obviously one of the timelines or go through the matrix and see how he's receiving the ball. So that's again where the report links up to the video. That's it really overall, just trying to show you a snapshot of how kind of just one person tries to combine the two as such. Roles from being the stat side of it, but also trying to show the scouting side. That's it really. If there's any questions.